Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alexandra and I'm an MBA Recruitment Manager here at Saïd Business School. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, presuming most of you are based in a European time zone. Really pleased this afternoon to be joined by 4 of our current students, just 4 of our cohort of 313 students from every corner of the globe. This webinar forms part of our series where we're featuring students from various regions of the world. Today, with a focus on Europe. However, I think what really defines Saïd Business School is the hugely diverse community that we have, which our MBA cohort is currently made up of 62 nationalities, so hugely. Diversity is sort of the word which I really overuse. And I think, you know, the people that are here today, what you will learn is that that passport they may hold, the right to work they have, the country they've lived and worked in, they're not defined by. And I think that is what really makes the community really special here at Saïd. I guess, you know, the reason we focus on sort of a series of focusing on different regions is that there are different features that may that are synonymous to maybe certain regions in terms of maybe that the work culture, experiences, perhaps the business schools that you consider, perhaps the post-MBA employment goals that you have. So perhaps that might come out in a few of the questions that I ask of the students today. And certainly, obviously, please feel free to send through your questions that you have. I will post some questions to the students, and then we will turn to some questions from everybody listening in thereafter. Would just ask that you try to make your questions of benefit to the group of everybody sort of listening in. If you have a question that you think is very sort of specific to your career search and your exact scenario, then I will be providing the MBA Recruitment email address where you can send through your inquiry, and I'll be more than happy to answer that thereafter, or to pass you on to one of our students if you'd like to have a chat with them. So without further ado, I think I'd like to turn over to our panel and perhaps have you introduce yourself, give us a little bit of backdrop, tell us what makes you you, and perhaps a little bit about your experience here at Saïd.
Sure, wonderful. Thanks so much, Amy. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening or good morning, depending where you are. I am Matthew Morgan. As you can see on the slide, I'm French American. So I've lived, studied, and worked across 7 different countries, from the Middle East to Europe, to North America, and then most recently coming from Asia. So I've worked for 7 years across corporate finance, business analysis, and investment management. So I worked in a French multinational in Korea and Japan, Air Liquide, one of the largest suppliers of oxygen in the world. And then I continued my career in kind of marketing and digital innovation in one of the world's largest investment management companies in emerging market equities. The name is MBA Asset. And looking forward, I'm considering technology or consulting after the MBA. Very excited to be here and to speak with you and offer any insights that you might find useful.
Hi, I'm Atos. I'm also here an MBA student from Germany originally, but I've spent most of my education actually in the UK. Did my undergrad at UCL, then my master's at LSE, and ended up working in Central and Eastern Europe as a credit structure, which, for those of you who don't know, is a sort of role where you try to find financing solutions for people and companies who can't find traditional financing tools working for them. And yeah, doing the MBA now, and I'm joining Bank of America Merrill Lynch over the summer, so we'll see how that goes.
Yes. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm German and I've lived and worked in 4 countries, Germany, Hungary, the UK, and recently the US. As you can see, I'm from the automotive industry, automotive supplier, where I first worked in the headquarters and business unit controlling, overseeing 42 international companies, how they were doing financially. Then I had a project in the oil and gas industry in the UK, which was very exciting. And the last 3 years I spent in the US with a turnaround case where we were basically helping one of the locations out of their deep crisis and turning them into a profit. And now they're actually doing pretty well. And it was a very exciting journey. Working internationally, and now especially coming here to the MBA, very exciting.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. Nice to meet you. So, like Matthew, I grew up and worked between 7 countries. I'm Canadian originally. Then I moved to the UK, lived in France, Switzerland, back in the UK, where I did my undergrad and my master's also at LSE. After that, I worked at the BBC on a documentary on land rights in Mali. Then decided to go to law school, worked in corporate law representing VCs mostly, and I liked working with startups mostly, and so decided to join the Seed Fund, which is this program that that's offered for the MBA, where it's 11 students who invest £50,000 a year in 2 startups. And that experience has been really amazing this year. I've learned a lot, and actually I found out this morning that I'll be joining a VC for the summer in London, so I'm really excited about that. And nice to meet you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, and I got McKinsey job after the MBA, but going back to Munich.
Well, I think that definitely speaks to my introduction, that students here at Said have lived, worked, and studied in so many different parts of the world. I think coming here, I think is a big decision. I think the group that we're just moving the mic a little bit closer, as there's sort of 5 of us hovering around this. So I've never been told that I speak quietly, but I understand you couldn't hear me too well at the beginning. So hopefully it's all clear now. I think, you know, coming to the MBA, and I think certainly of the, you know, the 4 students we have in the room, they've done a lot in a short space of time. But I think this 1-year MBA does not come without real consideration and being 110% sure of undertaking it. Also, perhaps, you know, if we look at Europe, a region in which an MBA is not necessarily always the typical path, albeit a couple of you have worked in the US as well, where it might be more common. I wonder, perhaps you could share, at what point of your career, or was there a tipping point at which you decided this was going to be the sort of next step for you? Perhaps even just if a couple of you want to share.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think I always wanted to study business, but I didn't want to do it for my undergrad. I studied history and international relations for my undergrad, and I always knew that I wanted to do an MBA, but I never knew at what point. And when I started working with startups and representing startups and VCs as a corporate lawyer, I found it just so fun to kind of get into their business plan and understand what they're doing, and seeing that kind of passion that came out of it. And that's when I realized that it was the right time.
For me, it was more about, I had already learned a lot in my previous job. So I've been working in corporate finance, and very exciting. I really enjoyed it. Consider finance if you're at all interested. But I wanted to go a bit more to the other side, to the strategic side. So basically being the one receiving my analysis, my data, coming up with plans, hence also the interest in consulting. And the MBA is a great opportunity to move away from anything you've currently been doing, build on that, and explore and expand. You will hear a lot of talk about the T-shaped network or professional interest. So spread broad and go deep in one area. And the MBA is the chance to expand, accelerate very quickly in a short period of time, very deep in one area.
So for me, it was kind of a situation where I always kept the option open. I did my GMAT test, I think, when I just graduated from my master's. So I just wanted to have the option for the next 5 years to kind of see if I wanted to do it or not. And then what ended up happening was after about 4 years of work, actually, no, after about 3 years of work, my bank moved me to Frankfurt. And that got me to kind of reconsider everything. And I thought, if not now, then never. So then after 4 years of work, I ended up applying. That was a great decision.
Yeah, for me, I guess it was around 4 or 5 years. It was quite a multi-year decision. So I actually spoke to quite a number of people outside the firm I was working in, both those who had done MBAs, those who hadn't, existing students, ambassadors, and I kind of came to the realization that the MBA was for me. I was looking to pivot and accelerate kind of in my own career. So I did take the time to do quite a bit of due diligence. Some might think it's a bit extreme, but I did visit 12 universities in 5 countries. So I always try to have kind of a sounding board with me, meaning a family member, be that my mother or my siblings, just to kind of get like a second perspective. And I mean, we can talk about that later, why Oxford, but I really find that speaking to students in the different universities is quite key to understanding the alignment with yourself. And then also kind of, listening to your gut and kind of looking at the profiles of the students and kind of where they're going afterwards, to kind of have a more of a 360-degree assessment of the program.
Fabulous. And obviously this webinar is not focused on application tips, sort of how to apply, but Atos made a really good point there. Your GMAT score is valid for up to 5 years. So if you're somebody dialed in here and you're not yet ready to apply, and this is a couple of years in the distance, getting on with the GMAT or the GRE and getting that test done is a good thing to have in the bank. So it's arguably the one thing that, if you're ready to go, could stop you from applying in line with the specific application deadline if you're not ready with that. So good point. So yeah, I think that does really bring me on to my next question. There is a lot of choice. There's so many different MBAs out there. I think the other thing to recognise is there's a lot of different offerings for MBAs now. Our MBA is a 1-year intensive experience, but there's everything from weekends to online to 1 year to 2 years. So perhaps sort of 2 questions there in one. Why Oxford Said and why a 1-year program as well?
Yes, so and that's a great question. I applied with my partner to MBAs. So we applied to 11 schools, both in Europe and North America. I had quite a few choices, and for me, the choice to go to a school in Europe, first of all, was based on just generally I had done my education in the UK, but I had been in North America for a while, and I wanted to do a 1-year MBA. So for me, the reason why I wanted to do a 1-year MBA was because I'd done a lot of schooling before, and I wanted to kind of have a good bridge to be able to pivot, but at the same time, speaking to a lot of people who had done 2-year MBAs, the second year, a lot of the time is more elective. So I wanted to kind of spearhead my career faster. At the same time, for my choice for Oxford, compared to other MBAs in Europe, I wanted kind of, as Matthew spoke about it, I wanted the kind of diversity that we have in our class, and also the kind of impact perspective. So at the moment, I'm doing the due diligence for the School Venture Awards. The school center is it's a very strong impact center, social entrepreneurship center at Oxford, and so I really wanted that kind of impact lens as well, which kind of brought me to Oxford. And at the same time, I wanted to be in a small city to kind of get to know people better and really spend time having interesting conversations with people that I wouldn't naturally meet as a lawyer.
Thank you. Regarding the 1 year, for me, it was 3 key reasons. One, of course, the cost, half the cost. There's very practical reasons, but I think that's actually very relevant to a lot of applicants. The second one is not being out of the job force alone, especially at the moment. We are making our careers when we are young. Now it's very important to progress in your career, and 1 entire year can have impact on your past jobs. So learning everything in a shorter period of time is in principle good. And the third point is, if you look at the 2-year MBAs, a lot of the first year is basics. And I didn't want to spend an entire year basically going over a lot of stuff I've already done. I have a business undergrad, I've worked in finance, so there would have been a lot of redundancy. And I just wanted to save that time and just focus on what I'm actually really here for, hence the 1 year. Why Oxford? One reason, and that's maybe important, especially for people coming from Europe and going back to Europe, don't underestimate the Oxford brand. It's actually huge. Specifically, Amy, you mentioned at the beginning that MBAs are not as typical or common yet, especially in Europe, as maybe in Northern America, where it has a lot of value, but Oxford itself has. So that combination is very, very powerful when you're applying to jobs, and not just when you're applying to jobs, for growing your network afterwards or while you're here. If you're basically being here opens up so many chances. You can basically approach CEOs of any company when you're kindly saying, hey, I'm doing an MBA currently, I'm looking into, I have this strategy project, I have this great idea for your company, would you be open for a coffee chat or something? Something you otherwise don't have the chance to, you can do it here. So that's very cool. And the other part is Oxford, or the Said MBA, has a good combination of having the business school, having a very solid program, and having the wider university in it. Oxford is so rich in history and opportunities. You will rarely find that at any other business school, which is just a business school.
Right. So for me, I second a lot of the things that were just said. In terms of the one-year program, I have 2 kids, so that kind of changes the arithmetic a little bit. And the one-year program definitely appealed. But in terms of Oxford, this question comes up quite often, right? People ask, so why Oxford? There's so many MBAs out there. I think for people who work in the professional sphere, this is probably an MBA is probably the last time you're going to be in an education environment, in a formal education environment for any significant period of time. And an MBA, much like an undergrad, is so much more than just, you know, a tool to get the next job, right? Besides that, it's also a tool to kind of broaden your horizons and get exposure to other things. And Oxford is one of those schools where you can get that exposure, right? We have the union, we have all these academics that are studying completely different things, right? And that's kind of what appealed me. It's getting appealed to me. It's getting the exposure to all these things that at some of the other schools you wouldn't get exposure to, right? I'm going to spend the rest of my life with finance and consulting people. Now is the time to get exposure to people from other spheres.
Yeah, no, I entirely echo what was just said. I mean, on the 1 year, certainly timing, and then, you know, costs, or opportunity costs and explicit costs of doing the program, from the tuition to just sort of living expenses. But then I think 1 year programs tend to attract, I think, a little bit more experienced or older students, so a bit more maturity, I find. You know, a lot of 2 year programs in the US might be a little bit more towards the mid-20s, whereas I find in Europe it's usually upper 20s, early 30s. But again, for Oxford, the values alignment with the business school itself, the fact that we actually have diversity, like 62 countries, as was mentioned. You have a lot of other schools that, you know, claim diversity, but if you look a little bit deeper, a lot of them might come from one country, or they have kind of some dual citizens. Community building is very easy to do in Oxford. It's just a perfect size to walk around and bump into people left, right, and center. I think if I were in a bigger city, it'd be very easy to kind of, I don't want to say get distracted, but it would kind of dilute the sort of community feeling and the cohesion. And then, yeah, again, the exposure to the wider Oxford ecosystem. I think we'll touch on it later, but the college kind of system, coupled to just doing other activities outside the business school. So for myself, I was fortunate to lead a project in the Oxford Developer Consultancy. So kind of social impact consulting was always something that appealed to me, and I had the chance to kind of lead this project with one of the largest microfinance institutions. So looking at kind of cutting edge research into business coaching for entrepreneurs, and sort of how that raises their loan capacity and business success. So we actually went to Myanmar for a week and got to kind of do field research. So all that would not have been possible in most of the business schools. I think that's kind of a key consideration, both for applicants and also for us alike to take into account.
Fabulous. I think just a couple of things I would add, just on a practical level. You obviously, by listening in here today, you're thinking about this and you're considering this process. But I think, you know, as Matthew said, he actually visited 12 schools. That's seriously impressive. But I would absolutely advocate you visiting if you can, if you live within a distance that you can get to us at some point during your consideration process. Please do. We have a series of open days, so like open house events that take place. We also give you the option to come and interview here in person, which from this year moving forward consists of a dinner at one of the Oxford colleges and a whole day of sessions with your interview built into that. And then once you receive your offer, we invite you for both a Friday and Saturday. I remember meeting Sarah actually last summer. I think it was in June, which was we had rather glorious weather, so maybe that made it ever more appealing. But 2 days in Oxford, you can bring a member of your family, partner with you. We realise this is a huge, big commitment, and that you're considering other great schools. You can't really get this decision wrong, but could you find somewhere that is that feels more your home for that 1 year? So absolutely, please do take the opportunity to come and see us. You can request a campus visit at any time, and I really recommend when you make that, inquiring with the person who replies to you to check whether that's during term time. If it's during term time, we can then arrange for you to go into a live MBA class, which is a really great way to see our students interacting with each other and really get a sense of the sort of style of learning here. So absolutely recommend that. Equally, if you're somewhere that means you can't ever get to us before you maybe join us, then that is fine. We can do everything virtually, of course. So, but moving on, I think, let's get a little bit more into sort of the experience and how you found that. I think some of the stuff that we can't really sort of describe on the website. There's this word that often comes up, that the Oxford experience brings a lot of serendipity, a lot of things that are the unknown that you wouldn't have expected. So I wonder if you could share, are there a couple of things that maybe have been surprising, either positively, or negatively, things that you just wouldn't have expected?
Yeah, so I was really, really apprehensive coming in about math. I had not studied math since I was 16, and let's say the GMAT was quite difficult for me as well, but you'll get through it. It's all good. So I was very scared about that. I remember coming into my first class in finance and saying, whoa, everyone can calculate this so fast, and they're on their Excels. I literally didn't know how to use Excel when I arrived. And I'll tell you, and I was scared because it's a 1-year MBA too, and some people say, you need to take more time if you don't come from a business or traditional business or finance background. And I completely disagree at this point. The most amazing part was sitting next to people who were from a finance background and spent the time with me during the breaks, showing me how to do these crazy, amazing keyword searches and how to use Excel and how to use lots of different kind of databases. And now I actually ended up doing super quant classes. I'm doing big data. I'm learning how to code right now. I'm doing corporate valuation, and I'm at the same level as my finance classmates, I would say. Maybe they might not say that, but at least I feel like that. And I'm doing 2 other quite quantitative courses where it's mostly the quantitative people in the class who are doing it. And so I'd say with hard work and also teamwork, if that's a part that you're scared about, you can totally 100% do it. Just believe in yourself.
Yeah. For me, it was the opportunities you get here. You have no idea what you're getting into. You hear it all the time. You have a lot of opportunities and chances and so many resources you can tap into. But once you're actually here, you get thrown at with events, literally, which really gets to the challenge of time management. At the beginning, you would try to run to everything, attend everything, and the crucial part is you see all the people around you, which to some extent are similar to you, while of course very diverse. So you want to do what the others do as well. And it takes a lot of self-reflection to decide what are you actually here for. And you're really going through a process, and I didn't expect that. I didn't think that the MBA would be, to some extent, personality changing or questioning your values, questioning your goals. And it's good. It's a good experience, and you're coming to sense with what are you actually good at, what are your strengths. You discover new strengths of yourself and where you can get into, and also what type of people do you want to connect with. You find so many new friends and deep relationships across the world, across the globe, which otherwise you would have never the chance to. So those have been a lot of those discoveries have been very helpful and surprising and exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I think before I came to Oxford, I remember having a few conversations with current students, and they told me you're going to be busy from like 9 a.m. to midnight. And I kind of thought, how is that possible? It's just going to be an MBA, right? You're going to be kind of studying and learning, but your schedule fills up quickly. I mean, I kind of always make the joke, you're choosing between 3 things to do at any given time. So be that lectures, right? Exercising, so trying to stay in shape, going to dinners, formals at one of the 38 colleges, balls as well, and then just generally, you know, kind of spending time with classmates. I think Oxford generally is a platform, so it's kind of what you make of it. You can leverage it in any different way you want. So as a tangible example, I was fortunate to bring in a leading European bank to speak about their fintech kind of research and how they're sort of pushing ahead and kind of looking at the intersection of technology with finance. And as a matter of fact, it's resulted in a few interviews from that. So just kind of, you know, if you're proactive and you're staying on top of the ball, you can really kind of shape your year much more so than I would say in other institutions, just because the business school is quite young and you're afforded a freedom of responsibility, and you have these empowering people around you to kind of, you know, you can ask questions about Excel or finance or other careers. And it's such a supportive, collaborative group that really was on display. I mean, we can talk about it after, but there was the MBAT competition, which we won for the 3rd year in a row. I would like to say we were the life of the party, because we were very much like in the center, very cohesive. You know, I actually had done an event with Sarah, so we won a bronze medal in pétanque. But you know, you just discover these hidden talents of people around you, and not only professionally, but then on a personal or athletic level. And I mean, it's just, yeah, it's exhilarating to kind of be here and make the most of it. So being busy really took me by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that, right? Like being busy. This is something that completely took me by surprise. When I came here, I actually listened to this webinar, I think a year and a half ago, something like that. And I listened to it and everyone was talking about like, oh, you're going to have to make so many choices. It's going to be really difficult. Time management is key. I come here and, oh, come on, you know, we're professionals. We work long hours. Like how bad can it be? Trust me, there's a lot to choose from. There's a lot going on. That's one of the really great things about the school is there's just so much going on. You have presidents come to the union to speak. You have PhD students who have just done a startup and raising funds and giving a talk about the things that they've invented and how they're raising money and so on. You've got all your school going on. You've got great employers coming to talk. You've got your friends to hang out with. So there's a lot going on, and so that was a huge surprise to me actually, and I'm glad it was a surprise. And then I think another thing that really surprised me about MBAs is, I mean, I have a very one-track academic path. Right? I studied economics, then finance, then worked in finance, and then I thought, what can I learn about finance from an MBA? Right? I'm here to kind of like learn about the other things. You'll be surprised how much you learn by just getting exposure to senior people, getting them to explain how they view things. And you really realize that things that you thought you might know, you kind of either rediscover or you see in a different light. So I actually learned things about finance, which I thought that wouldn't happen. But it does. Absolutely.
I think what's fascinating, obviously, about what you share is that when you look sort of on the website, you see the curriculum, and I think there is so much more to the experience that you bolster around those classes that might be from sort of the hours of 9 to 5, but Oxford is very much it's almost 24 hours, seven days a week. So just to touch on it, just if in case anybody didn't understand or know what the MBATS is, it's a sporting, mainly sports competition that takes place at HEC Paris every year. And it's a competition between 12 business schools or 15, important that it's 15 and not 12, which happened 2 weeks ago. So it's a big event of the MBA year, where I think 200 of our students went to Paris just now. 220. My stats are low. 220 and 15 schools. And Oxford Said very proudly won for the 3rd time in a row. But I think, you know, just as an onlooker, just seeing even on social media, the Oxford students seem to be kind of front and centre of everything that was happening with the cheering and, you know, maybe the other schools still looking on. So I think that's testament to what the cohort have built. And go back 9 months, they didn't know each other. So absolutely amazing. So coming a little bit more onto the experience, perhaps a little bit more specifically, we talk about a college system here. Some people dialed in here may understand what that means. Perhaps we could just talk a little bit more about how that works, how you experienced it in terms of coming through maybe the admissions process, and that may have differed dependent on the stage at which you applied during the admissions cycle, I think. And perhaps just a little bit more information about how that has played out for you.
Okay, so Matthew and myself, we're both in Green Templeton College, right? And we're actually neighbours as well.
Yeah, we are.
So my application to my college, Green Templeton is one of the newer colleges, which has its ups and downs, right? So downs, it doesn't have that Harry Potter feel about it, although we do have a great observatory. Yeah, we can look at the stars. And one of the upsides is we have great facilities, right? And one of those things is we have a modern apartment block, which is right next to the business school. I mean, right next door. And that was something that kind of appealed to me because I wanted a larger accommodation, which I could rent for my family, and be right next to the business school, so I can really make the most of it. Yeah, so that was one of the things. But one of the things that I kind of learned after I joined was that Green Templeton has this great co-curricular mingling approach to things. So they always have these talks going on from other people in the college who are studying completely different things. Only I think last week I went to a talk by a PhD student who was talking through why you should worry and should not worry about quantum computing. So that was something very interesting. I kind of sat in and like had a non-technical introduction to how all of that works. That was great. So that's something that's quite nice about our college as well.
Yeah, very, very interdisciplinary. Just to add on, I went to a talk about public policy and neuroscience. Yesterday, I had a conversation while having lunch at the college because you can have meals there. They're usually subsidized, so they cost less than £5. Talking about kind of chemotherapy, frequency and treatment, and how that plays out in human population. So you get these kind of conversations that you would probably not have as often in other business schools. And I think Green Templeton also has some of the largest professional degree students. So we have quite a bit of MBAs. I think we're at 70.
Yeah, almost 70.
Yeah, and then there are also some MPPs. There's medical doctors, lawyers. So you have this kind of mix of like-minded or kind of similarly aged students. It's graduate only. But yeah, I guess the downside is you don't have that kind of Harry Potter feeling. In terms of the application, I mean, that was my first choice. I know that I think you have a choice, and then if you're not allocated that choice, you're given another kind of random one. Yeah. It depends on where you are in terms of the cycle. I think maybe you can speak to that more. But I wanted to, just like Atos, live right next to the business school. It's called Rowley Abbey Court. Very good grounds, and literally 30 meters away behind the business school. So it's turned out great for me.
So my college is St. Catherine's. I was allocated. And yes, although I would have preferred to be in one of the grand colleges, Christchurch or Pembroke, beautiful colleges. I want to talk a bit more about the social experience of the college, because that's in the end most that it is for us, because you're not studying there, you don't have the lectures at your college, you have everything academic-wise here at the business school. So it's really much about engaging in the community. And the cool thing is that we're having all the dinners at each other's college. So the cool part is you can invite guests to your college. And since we are a very large cohort, very well spread over all the colleges, one of the bucket lists I think almost everyone has here is trying to have dinners at each other's college as most as we can. So you still have the opportunity to experience all those beautiful colleges and diverse. And the good part about St. Cat's is it's quite large, and it's also very friendly and very accommodating. So next week, we are having our second big MBA dinner together. So we just pooled all the MBAs that are at St. Cat's, and organized for all of us to invite guests. So we're having dinner with 84 MBAs. It's basically just us in their college hall with a 3-course served meal at £4, which is ridiculously cheap. The good part about it too. And then, of course, you also have the sports. So I got into rowing. I didn't expect it. I was more of I want to try it once. It's Oxford, you have to try rowing. And it's so much fun, and it's a great balance and so completely different from everything else you do here. You're especially when you come in, you have 1 month left of good weather, and then it will be dark mostly and a bit rainy. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to just get outside and exercise, shut off your mind, enjoy the nature, be outside, mingle with other people completely outside of anything what you're doing. That was a great experience for me. And then compete. That's really fun, and see all of the other MBAs then coming and cheering for you. Another great experience.
Yeah, so the hat picked Balliol for me. Balliol is one of the older colleges. We're 6 people there, and I didn't really know what to expect because I knew that from my friends in undergrad that college life used to be kind of very intrinsic, and I heard that compared to the MBA actually, you didn't spend as much time in your college. But so I actually made a concerted effort to spend time in the college and get to know people. For me, my favorite was just sitting down at dinner with someone from an astrophysicist and then arguing against a lawyer on the laws of kind of artificial intelligence going forward and how that has to be shaped and changed. So I've met so many people who've kind of changed my mind on different things through these college dinners and different interactions I've had through the college. And I would say that if you do come here, spend time there and get to know other people and let them kind of challenge your perspectives. It's really fun.
Yeah, so on a practical level, I think you guys have explained it well. The MBA, the business school campus itself, is where you will spend your days, and you'll often be here into the early evening, later evening, for co-curriculars, speaker events, etc. You can have breakfast, lunch and dinner on campus here, but the college is effectively your access to the wider university. So from sports, cultural activities, speaker events, the dining hall, and as many of you will know, if you Google image Oxford, this is how I would describe it. It's largely a university city of buildings that are, for the most part, 500-600 plus years old. So as the postgraduate community has grown in Oxford, it's about a 50-50 split between postgrads and undergrads now, a community of 23,000 students. There isn't the room to house all of those postgraduate students in accommodation within the 4 walls of that college building in most cases. So the 4 walls, which is maybe 4 stone walls overlooking the grass quadrangle. So quite often you will live, as maybe Atos and Matthew have alluded to, you might live in a private rental, or you might live in some university-owned accommodation or college-owned accommodation, but it might not be directly within the college. That doesn't in any way diminish your relationship with that college, because the great thing about Oxford is, Alex spoke about this earlier, is it's a small city. So you're either getting around on foot, on bike, 5 or 10 minutes, and everybody is effectively bobbing and weaving between the business school and the various college buildings. So it makes for a year that when you have got a very busy schedule, you can get places rather quickly, which in practical terms is important. So thanks for your comments there. So I guess, as we said, this isn't about how to apply or how to get into Said and the application process, but I think it would be remiss of us not to share perhaps some tips, or perhaps anything you might have approached differently if you could sort of go back and do the process again, or any advice you would have for somebody as a prospective student.
All right, so for me, I think first is kind of what I would do, or what I would recommend before you start. I'll kind of think about how to deal with potential applicants. But in terms of once you've got an offer, once you're about to start, you've accepted, you've decided to come here, I would highly recommend you take a holiday before you come, because it will be, you'll be going 100 miles an hour for the whole 12 months essentially. And another thing, for those of you who are interested in traditional career paths, traditional meaning, the finance and consulting streams, right? I would highly recommend organizing yourselves and preparing before you come here, right? Because the first week that you're here, you're going to have, the global head of, something coming here and giving talks to you. And if you're not prepared, you won't be able to take the maximum advantage advantage from that, right? You have these great people come here from the first day, you get exposure to them. If you're even a little bit prepared, you can take advantage of that, ask the right questions, and really reap the benefits of what the school offers you. So that will be my recommendation for if you've already decided to come here.
Yeah, I would, again, kind of continue on that. I think I have three main buckets. So first, get the GMAT out of the way early, kind of as Amy alluded to. Second would be make use of the pre-MBA free time. And then third would be cultivate and preserve your network. So again, GMAT is painful, but you can get through it. I took it 6 times. Again, also quite extreme, but just, if you don't score as well as you'd like to, do it again. It's just a question of practice, and if you need to, try different resources. So I tried 3 different classes, and yeah, you'll eventually make it. Making use of the free time before the MBA, totally agree with Atos. I actually quit several months before the MBA and just decided to travel the world. So I did 16 countries across 4 continents, and I really kind of prioritized meeting classmates before. So I didn't meet any of you before, but I met 25 from India all the way to South America, Argentina to Montreal, Canada. And that really also helped kind of build rapport and kind of momentum within the class body. It makes it easier once you get here. And I do agree, preparing before you come here, if you weaken some areas. So if you're from like a non-traditional background, maybe getting up to speed with quantitative things, everything from like Excel to Wall Street prep, all the way to even maybe if you want to try like hard skills like coding. So I did some Python courses online. There's a number of both free and cheap resources that you can use, because once you're here, you're going to be pretty busy, and you find that you won't be able to do as much as you'd like to. And again, you can take advantage of opportunities if you come in with the right mindset and prepared. And then lastly is cultivating, preserving your network. So just as much it is about what you know, it's who you know. And there's always ways you can either help other people within the cohort with your own network, or just kind of extend it by connecting individuals you're meeting here or organizations here with previous contacts. So don't neglect people who you already know, and kind of both ex-colleagues or friends in that regard.
Wise words.
Yeah.
Well, just adding to what the two just said, one point before the MBA, don't just take time for yourself and travel, but also take the time to spend it with your family and friends. Very, very important. This year will be draining. It will be challenging. Make sure, especially a lot of you will be internationals, and I mean, you've seen from us here, we've lived in different countries, you have friends in different countries. Use the chance to connect and strengthen those relationships before you come here, and also prepare yourself and your network for this journey, meaning make sure they know you will be busy and that they don't take it hard if you're not speaking to them for a couple months. And the other part is sort things out with your family or your partner. If your partner is coming here, make sure you have a good plan and strategy for everything in place. My partner, for example, is still in the US, and we organized roughly before who's visiting whom. He's mostly visiting me, basically only, which is very kind of him. And how often you're going to see each other. Have strategies in place. That helps a lot to look for, and if you have those structures, it makes it a lot easier, and because it will be challenging on both sides. Another point, think about and I didn't do that enough, I think. I think it all worked out in the end because I'm very happy here. But if you're considering schools, or especially once you already have the offer and have other offers, picture yourself being here, what it actually means. In my application process, I focused a lot on mostly just the webinars about GMAT and application tips and how to get in and what to write your essays about, like all very practical tips. But also really think about, what is the experience like? What do you want to get out of it? What are things you currently don't have, can't picture, which you would actually find really helpful, value adding for yourself? Yeah, my recognition.
Yeah, so for me, I'll just touch on the essay because I think we've had a lot of great points on GMAT and prep work and everything. I think that the essay is kind of a time to kind of shine and just be yourself and be your authentic self. And when I ended up thinking about the different schools that I could go to, I went back to kind of how I felt when I was writing that essay and whether my authentic self, could see myself at Oxford or in another school, and that really paid off in the end. So my partner is also doing the MBA with me, and so that was also very interesting, like your point about kind of preparing as a partnership going into the MBA. I'd say that I met a lot of people who, both men and women, who have accompanied their spouses or partners with children even sometimes, and they've had an amazing, really great time. They found the community extremely fun. A lot of them actually came to MBAT and were some of the key participants, and it was as if they were kind of classmates. So if you ever kind of worry about that, I'd say, I'm not speaking from everyone's perspective, but I think that they've had a really wonderful time in Oxford. Some of them have jobs, some of them don't, but they all meet each other all the time, and it's a really fun, supportive environment that they have here.
Right. No, it's really, and I think what's interesting there is that everybody has a different life situation. That you've all come to this experience, and you're making it work, and you're living through it. What is scary is that we are now in the sort of penultimate term, really, with the summer term. We haven't had any questions come through yet, but please do start sending some through. I'm just going to finish off with one question before we do turn to the audience, but please do start popping those over. I just wondered if you might be able to share what you are doing for the summer term, because obviously that is a big difference between sort of the 1 year and 2 year programs, in that we have a couple of different options for the summer. So
yeah, I can start. It's pretty quick for me since I already have my job afterwards, and I'm starting in January, so it's really nice to have quite a long break in between. I will do all my traveling now the next half year, so I'm taking the electives in summer. Very interesting classes, mega project management, and I'll be auditing as well climate change and environmental studies. And the rest of the time I would just explore other continents.
So for me, the summer is slightly different in the sense that I've got an internship. So I'm going to be spending it in London, beavering away and seeing whether I can convert it. So that'll be my summer, but I'll see all you guys in September again.
Yeah, I'm in the final decision whether or not I stay to do electives, or I may join a few organizations. So I'm looking at maybe a financial inclusion organization in Asia, or potential kind of technology players within Europe. So should know within the next week or two.
Yeah, so I just found out this morning that I was working at a VC. So the VC is called Innovia. It's the managing partner of it in London is the ex-CFO of Google. They're actually starting creative destruction labs here with the Entrepreneurship Center at Oxford Said, which is a huge thing for anyone who's interested in tech. Basically, they've realized that Oxford is #1 for R&D in Europe in terms of a university. And they have all these amazing entrepreneurs coming from all these different kind of perspectives and different colleges at the university. But a lot of time they find it hard to kind of make their idea kind of the bridge between the scientific idea or any kind of idea to kind of a scalable kind of business. So they work on that kind of transition. I won't be doing that, but it's a really interesting, fun fact that that's starting now in September. I don't know yet what I'm doing after my summer, but I have quite a lot of interviews lined up, which I was a bit apprehensive about because I'm switching from law to kind of investment. But it's been great so far.
Great diversity of options again. Atos actually does have to leave us to get a 3 p.m. train to London for a very good reason. He's been very involved in our finance lab this year, and is going to the Oxford-Cambridge finance dinner in London.
Looking forward to it.
So have a great time. He's going to dash off just now. But so for anybody listening in that believes, thank you. Anybody listening in who believes that we don't collaborate together, there's clearly fierce competition, but you know, the Oxford universities definitely do work together. So we have got a question here, specifically a little bit maybe to Germany. Sarah, I wonder if you could answer this. So somebody who would like to go back to industry in Germany, how recognised do you think an MBA degree is in Germany?
Ah, what a great question. So it'll be nice for me to answer. The answer is a lot. As I said earlier, the Oxford and especially also the Oxford MBA is very well regarded in Germany. And while in general MBAs are still, I would say, on the newer side, especially if you go into industry and if you're not looking at the classical like finance roles or consulting roles where MBAs are very well known and very highly regarded, there the Oxford brand will definitely kick in. And because it stands for high quality education, and you can feel that, and that definitely also opens you a lot of doors. I mean, we have the careers team here doing a very good job and also offering a lot of European positions, chances, talks. A lot of employers from Europe are coming here, also from Germany, global brands, and you can also always reach out to them and ask them, would there also be something in any of the German offices? And basically anyone is happy to chat to you. And the other part is there's a huge alumni network. So even if you're interested in a company that is not yet sourced by the Oxford Careers team or that's not coming here yet, just get in contact with anyone of the admin team, like for example, Amy, and she knows everyone and will connect you to someone who is in it, who has a friend there, who has a colleague there. Very good opportunities.
Excellent. So great question here. Are there any particular elective courses that you would recommend? Matthew seems keen to answer this. So
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at Alex because we were both in South Africa.
It was amazing.
It was incredible. Yeah, 1 week long. So you can choose an elective during the April break, the Easter break, and we both chose South Africa. You also have London or New York. London is a fintech. New York is marketing, I think digital marketing. For us, it was doing business in Africa and the prospects of future opportunities. The professor, she's just remarkable. She's a ex-Harvard Business School professor. I think she's just visiting. She's joined ALU, Catherine Duggan. So if you get the chance and she's teaching it, by all means, you should go. I think I learned more in that week than I learned in months in other places. It was, I think we did 12 or 13 cases. I mean, it was quite intense, but everyone showed up. Everyone was ready to be cold called. There was like vigorous, spirited discussions, and we just turned in our assessment last week. It was a little bit stressful, but that's part of the Oxford experience. So definitely, yeah, South Africa.
Yeah, I'd second that. I can say, maybe it sounds geeky, but it was the best academic experience I've ever had. And I'm way too educated. I've done way too much education in the past. So really, I would highly recommend doing it, even if you have no interest in doing business in Africa. It was kind of bringing everything together from business to macroeconomics to, we talked about women in the boardroom, to Chinese investment, to macroeconomics, sociology, politics, philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just an incredible way, and I think it's really a testament to kind of how Oxford is so multidisciplinary and brings kind of all these different perspectives in the classroom as well as these great professors.
Yeah.
I didn't do international.
perhaps any insights on the electives this term that you were studying?
Actually, from last semester, I really enjoyed the global strategy one with Max Stefan. Very insightful too, very connecting. A lot of the bits and pieces that we've learned before, a bit like Alex said, it's really picking up. It's building on the foundations you've built. This term, negotiations, is extremely helpful.
That's great.
Very practical. The professor is so engaging. You're really being challenged and really sometimes being pushed in situations where you don't feel quite comfortable, but this is what the entire experience is all about, and it's absolutely invaluable. Especially a lot of us are currently looking into internships, full-time positions, negotiating your salary, negotiating things beyond your salary. It's extremely relevant and helpful.
I'm taking private equity this term, and it's excellent. Looking at leveraged buyouts, we actually have negotiations we're doing kind of live with actual industry professionals. So we actually kick off tomorrow. What's unique about that is that you have, I think, executive MBAs as well involved, in addition to the Master of Law and Finance and Master of Finance and Economics. So it's kind of a cross section of the business school. So you get kind of cross pollination there, and just you're interacting with both junior and more senior individuals. So it also benefits you on a social level. And yeah, the content itself, Ludovic, the professor, he's outstanding. He's won a lot of awards. So definitely recommend private equity if you have the chance.
I think for anybody want to, start to immerse themselves in maybe some of the areas of interest here and the work of our faculty, it's amazing sometimes if you just navigate to our events tab on the website, you'll see quite often there'll be different webinars and online sessions that our faculty and researchers will be sort of hosting. So there's a lot of things that you can dial into before you get here. I mentioned open day events. We have our next open day coming up on the 7th of June. And for anybody who would like to, we will have a live stream of our faculty taster session that will be hosted by Professor Richard Barker. He is in our accounting finance faculty, focusing on accounting. And I've heard previous students actually say that he makes accounting fun. He was actually voted by the last cohort to host the end of class ceremony speech. So I'd really recommend dialing into that if you'd like to. We only have one other last question here, which might sort of close us off, but I know certainly for the three of you here, you haven't sort of got children with you here in Oxford, but I know we certainly have people on the course that do. I wonder, could you share any thoughts, maybe how you think they might have managed that?
I think they're actually managing very well. Well, of course, considering the circumstances here, it goes a bit into what Alex said earlier, that everyone is managing their time quite well, and all the families are very much involved in the entire experience here. So a lot of the partners join for dinners, join for events, and there are many events specifically just for the partners, also including the children. They are meeting up amongst each other. Sometimes I even think they have an even better experience because they're just having all the great time and all the fun and all the social events and talks without all the work. And partners and families can also be included in the college experiences. Some colleges even allow you to become a fellow of the college, so they can join the rowing teams or whatever it is. But yeah, specifically also with kids, of course, it's dedication, and you need to make the time for it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's absolutely doable, and probably even better than in some other situations, because again, Oxford is quite small. It's actually really nice being here. It has a lot of parks, it has a lot of cafes, so you can spend really nice time here, other than in a bigger city or somewhere where it's just rural or quite far away from anything very interesting.
And only 1 hour away from London, so very easy to commute.
One of our friends is she's a surgeon from South Africa, and her husband actually lives in South Africa, and she has 2 of her kids here, and she makes time. I think she's had a great support network here, and but she shows up at events sometimes at midnight too, at these great balls that we have. So I think it's doable. It's never easy, obviously, but it's definitely a great support network that you have here.
Right, can I make a general?
Of course.
Something we haven't touched on that much yet about Europe specifically. We would encourage people from Europe to apply and more to apply. What we have currently, we have quite, if you look at the statistics, we have quite a large representation from, for example, North America, South Asia, which comes again with the value of the MBA just being recognized more there currently. But it adds so much to the diversity, and I feel comfortable saying everyone from Europe is excellent in terms of, not just because, yes, of course, it's easy for us to say that now, but really about my classmates from Europe. They are extremely intelligent, smart, interesting, so many different worldviews, values, and you have a great chance too, because we're of course looking for a diverse cohort. So if you're from Europe, or maybe are even looking at coming to Europe afterwards, definitely consider it. You have very good chances. Your chances are probably better than for some other regions.
Sure.
If I want to say that.
I think they're seeking as well to boost, to look at Europe more seriously. So I know London is a big draw, maybe schools in France or US, but I think Oxford is a very viable option. And it's getting more traction, especially if you look at rankings. It's worth noting that the school's only 20 years old, so I think there's a long road ahead for the school to kind of be a powerhouse in the business school.
Great comments. We have got one last question here, which I think, given it's just one question, without wanting to run over, let's see what the students have to say. I think so. Somebody here who's coming to the MBA, looking to start the MBA, a little bit older. I think Matthew spoke about how you find the community here a little bit more mature.
Indeed.
What would you have to say in terms of, MBA students that are slightly older than the average coming to the program?
Yeah, so I think our range is like what, 23 to 40 or something. The average is what, 28.5. So I'm 31, and I think
too.
So I frankly think the older you are, the better it is to do the MBA, just because, obviously to a limit, but you derive more from it. I think you can speak to your experiences, you know yourself better, you know what you want to get from it, and I find you just come with the maturity level and the experience to kind of maximize the value of this. Personally, I gravitate probably towards maybe the slightly older individuals. I find that they're quite calm. They oftentimes have partners or children. So I think it's a very welcome and valuable addition to the class, just because they kind of bring that sort of, I would say gravitas, but the kind of perspective that you don't always have from younger students. So I would by no means discourage people who are, in their mid-30s, even late 30s to come. But one of my better friends is actually in his late 30s. And he's enjoying it, I would say, even more than maybe other students, just because he really, values the time away from working, and kind of this experience of learning, and how enriching it is, and kind of valuable it is to spend time away from the routine that we all kind of get into in our careers.
I would maybe add to that, to not just limit it to engaging with people from the same age group. It's about the maturity and not your age level. It's about having thought enough about what you want in life, what you want from your career. And that actually also means that a lot of people are engaging with other people. Like Matthew and I are quite close, and I'm 25, so it doesn't mean that he's just spending time with old people. So yeah, it's more about the maturity level, and being clear on what you want and how you want to spend your time, and not so much about the age. So anyone here, especially also some of the younger people who I would have thought, okay, they're might be beginning of 30s, they are 24. I'm like, what, you're 24? I would have never guessed, just from everything they've done already and how committed and determined they are.
I'd also add, just from kind of a woman kind of career planning perspective, I definitely at 31, you're kind of thinking about that a bit more than when you're younger sometimes, because you have kind of a conflict between wanting to build a family and a career. But I see it less as a conflict this year. It's been great to be able to speak to other women about different kind of ideas we have and how we're going to be able to balance it. Obviously, there's also men in the equation, but it's definitely something that you think about a lot when you're in your 30s. And I think that it's really empowering to be in a business school with other women who are that age and are thinking about these issues and kind of like strategizing about what next.
And just maybe one final thought. I think the MBA is a great equalizer. So you can be 23, you could be 39. We're all in the same boat. We're all doing the same courses. We're all thinking about the same kind of like next steps. And I think, in that regard, I wouldn't worry so much about the age. More, is it the right time for you to do it?
Yeah, that's great for you personally.
I think we do veer towards stats, and when you look to apply, you'll look at sort of these stats are averages. They are literally averages. So when you look at GMAT score, it's an average. It's an average age, an average work experience. Everybody brings something diverse to the party, and we very much are taking a holistic approach, looking at all those things when you come onto the program. Matthew has something else.
No, I totally agree with that. I dealt with 11 other business schools, and a lot will say, we're holistic. We look at everything. But frankly, I had conversations, maybe I was on a wait list, and it was just one data point around either a GPA or a GMAT score. Whereas I do find that Oxford, and they reward the diversity. They give out scholarships, and you have different ways of getting involved that frankly I didn't see materialize in other business schools. So I think Oxford does walk the talk. So I would very much encourage, especially Europeans, to apply, because you might be pleasantly surprised by the engagement you'll have.
Thank you. Well, you guys are so passionate. It's like we're halfway through the week and they're still full of beans. So thank you so much for joining us. I have just in the chat box shared an email address. It's mba-recruitment@sbs.ox.ac.uk. If you have any question or any kind of inquiry, please do send it through. If you have an inquiry specific to one of the panelists, then I'm sure I'll be able to pass that on. And I would just, encourage you to, if you're interested and you haven't done so already, download our MBA brochure or register your interest for the next application cycle. As long as you tick yes to receiving emails from us with the wondrous introduction of GDPR requirements, then you will receive all updates, all programme updates, all of the information regarding applying for next year. And we really just look forward to engaging with you and hopefully seeing you here at some point on campus. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.